In this lesson, we will learn about elementary row operations on augmented matrices. So there are 3 elementary row operations that we need to know about. And you need to really pay attention to the arrow that is being used and also to any coefficients that you might see in front of the row numbers. So the first is just to interchange 2 rows, and the reason that we would do that will make much more sense later when we're using these augmented matrices to solve equations. But to interchange 2 rows, notice this is R1 and then a double arrow R2, which essentially means R1 will become R2 and R2 will become R1. So that means row 1 should become row 2, so 5, -2, 3. Row 1 is now row 2. Row 2, 3, 1, -2 is now row 1. So that's interchanging 2 rows. The second is multiplying a row by a constant. So obviously a non-zero constant, because if we multiplied by 0, everything would be 0. Notice it's saying 2 times R1 will become R1. So row 2, nothing is happening to. So I'm leaving row 2 exactly as it is, but I'm going to take 2 times R1 and put that in row 1. So 2 times 5, which is 10, 2 times -2, which is -4, and 2 times 3, which is 6. So that would be that row operation that I'm multiplying by 2, multiplying R1 by 2, and putting it back into R1. And the last is adding a multiple of one row to another. So notice here, I've got a lot more going on. I'm taking R1, so this is R1, row 1, plus 2 times R2. So I'm going to take 2 of these. So if it helps you, you can go ahead and write what 2 of those would be. So that's going to go into R1. So R1 is going to be 5 plus 2 times 3, which is 6. So 5 plus 6, which is 11. -2 plus 2 times 2. I'm sorry, -2 plus 1 times 2, which is 2. I'm adding those together to get 0. And 3 plus 2 times -2, or 3 plus -4, which is -1. Notice R2, exactly the same as it was before, because we were putting it into R1, so it tells us exactly where to put it. So let's try a couple of these. First one, I have 1/2 R2 becomes R2. So half of R2, here's R2, which means row 1 doesn't change at all. Row 2, I'm simply going to take half of everything. So half of 4 is 2, half of -2 is -1, and half of 16 is 8. Now I'm taking my new matrix, and I'm going to add R1 and R2, so I'm going to add my rows together, and I'm going to put those in R1. So 3 plus 2 is 5. Again, I'm putting that in R1. 1 plus -1 is 0, and 7 plus 8 is 15. R2, notice nothing happened to that, so it's still 2, -1, 8. Here's another. This is obviously for a system of 3 equations rather than 2. The first one, they're asking me to take -R3 plus R2 and put it into R2. So R1, nothing happened. I'm going to go ahead and recopy all of those values. R3 is going to remain exactly the same also, but R2 is going to become the opposite of R3 plus R2. So 2 plus -2, which is 0, -8 plus -1, which is -9, 4 plus -7, which is -3, and -18 plus 0, which is -18. So notice here I made them negatives to help me with the math, but nothing actually happened to R3. Next one, I'm taking -1/9 times R2 and putting that back in R2. So again, nothing's happening to 1, nothing is happening to 3. To row 2, I'm taking it times -1/9. So 0 times -1/9 is 0. -9 times -1 is +9, divided by 9 is 1. -3 times -1 is +3, divided by 9 is 3/9, or 1/3. And then negative 18 times negative 1 is positive 18, divided by 9 is 2. So those are my row operations. Go ahead and try these two operations and then press play to check your work. So the first one, again, I'm only replacing R2, which means R1 will remain exactly the same, and R3 will remain exactly the same. R2 will now be 5 times R3 plus R2. So I might go ahead and take this times 5, which is 0, and this times 5, and this times 5, and this times 5. So I'm going to add that to R2 and put that into R2. So negative 2 plus 0, 1 plus 25, 5 plus negative 5, and 24 plus 50. For the other one, again, I'm replacing R2, which means R1, R3 will remain exactly the same. So not a bad idea to write those out. And I'm taking 2 times R2 plus R1. So 2 times R2, I'm going to go ahead and do that math down here. 2 of those Wow. 2 of those plus R1. So 4 plus negative 4, which is 0. 3 plus 52, which is 55. 0 plus 0, which is 0. And I lost my place. So 0 plus 0, which was 0. And negative 11 plus 148, which is 137. So those are my operations.